Okay, so we're here at Dallas Safari Club for our campfire special edition for the Campfire podcast.
There's no campfire.
There is no campfire, but it's we're so lucky here because I suppose it's the time of year where everybody in this world all comes into one place, so we can sit down with old friends and new friends, and we've got Jacob here with us. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And there's like several things I want to talk about today. One is, you're a cool dude. You often see you walking around the show here, sort of hustling and bustling with people, and I've wanted to get you on the podcast for a little while. But also, we've got so many sort of really special stories with Rigby since we brought the company back. And my absolute favorite, I'm going to ask you to share for the people at home.
About the cufflinks.
Well, is your journey, your sort of character arc as a Rigby customer? Marc loves this story, so I get to tell it to everyone. I was in the industry, in the firearms industry, but not in the hunting industry, and had sponsored a TV show, had always knew about the brands, the big ones, Holland, Purdy, Rigby, right? That's kind of what you hear about in America. And then I found out there's all these other ones, but I came to the show, I was really excited, I always wanted to go on safari, I'd not been yet, I was very young, couldn't really afford anything in the building, and went to some of the other rifle makers, from the London gun trade, and they were not nice. They were not kind. Is the easiest way to put it. Not how I normally put it, but this will be on the internet, right? And they just were. They were rude. They were rude, and I was a kid, and it was your first year, so it's been 10 years ago. 10 years ago now, yeah.
And I wandered in the booth, and there was these 416 cufflinks that you guys had made from test cartridges.
That's it, yeah. So we get these big buckets of ammo left over.
And I bought these cufflinks. I was super excited to buy the cufflinks, and the card machine you had didn't work. It was European. It was like the swipe, but that's Europe.
It. Yeah.
And my debit card obviously wasn't going to pay in pounds in Dallas. It was causing the bank an issue. And Marc looked at me and he said, take the cufflinks, find a cash machine, and come back and pay me when you find the cash machine. We'd never met before. No. And I was just blown away. So I found one and came back and paid, and then I sent Marc a note that said, I really appreciate the way you guys do business and appreciate the kindness and how you guys operate. And I remembered that. And probably a year later, 2 years later, I was in London around Christmas time. A friend and I were over and knocked on the door, and a lady opened the door at Rigby at the shop and said, we're only accepting in bespoke clients. And I said, well, we're from America, we're here from, and she goes, oh, if you're American, come in. And so we came in, and Marc, they were packaging everywhere. They were getting ready for the show, to leave for this show that year. And he took us around, showed us all the guns, let me hold the Corbett rifle, which was a huge deal for me. And he said, I'm going to give you this book. It's like the story of Rigby. And I said, I can't afford anything in this shop. And he looked at me and he goes, but you will. And I remembered that always. And so last year at the show, I ordered my first 500 from Rigby, and super excited to have it. My business partners also bought them, so we're all excited to have a
Absolutely. How many double rifles was that? Was it 4?
We bought 14, 15, 16, and 17 of the box logs.
Yeah, 4 double rifles. And it was, I think, as I said, there's so many amazing stories over the last 10 years of Rigby's. But this one, it just really touched my heart, because I remember last year coming back to the booth, and you said, hey, you probably don't remember me. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, yeah, I just want to say that, 9 years ago, the cufflink story, whatever, and that's the way we were treated, the way I was treated, is why me and my buddies have just bought 4 double rifles from the company. I think and it just, I don't know, it just really, really landed with me.
It's amazing, right? The way you guys operate and the way you guys do business is so refreshing I've been to every shop in London, and now at this point in my life, I've been to most gun makers that are left in the world. Right, I've either visited their facility or their retailer, and I can say that when you walk in Rigby or walk in the booth, you're actually greeted, and the people talking to you care about you as a customer and a hunter, and you're not just a dollar sign walking in the door. And it's amazing because we build relationships and friendships, and year after year we get to see each other and speak with each other, and it's just a refreshing way to do things.
We're just on camera, buddy.
Well, good to see you again.
Cheers, man. I said it would happen. I said it would happen.
Well, at least we know it.
That took 6 minutes.
It's the best. You know, normally you get someone to stand with a sign.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the next iteration.
Yeah.
Simon will have to get a sign that says in progress.
We'll leave that in.
We'll leave that in.
We'll leave that in.
But I think that just sums up this show. I mean, I love doing Dallas Safari Club,
Right.
as I say, because literally everybody is here in one place. And I suppose in the last 10 years, I was talking about this with Simon last night, that my role at Rigby's has gone from hustling and selling guns on the booth to kind of just being more of like a statesman for the company. And it's a conveyor belt of different people, old friends, new friends coming by the booth, like Eric just there.
Yeah,
wants to
yeah.
come and just shake hands. How's it going? You know, got a hunt coming up. Anything new from Rigby's?
Well, the company's grown
Yeah.
from, you know, when you guys were in like you had the tent, but it was just the tent, right? Everyone was huddled under the tent looking at the 3 or 4 guns, and there was a book and the cufflinks, right? But the space was very small.
Yeah.
And now you guys have got the box lock out, right, which is huge. And every gun you release, there's just more and more demand.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably twice as many guns in the booth there were 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Well, I remember the first show I did. Again, Simon, our head of marketing, found the picture. There was the late Simon Claude from Wesley Richards. He, you know, I mean, I think this is a side note. I think just Wesley's as a brand is just, for me, it's the benchmark of how a best gun maker should be. And the return of Rigby's was really, I wouldn't say based upon that, but at the beginning, I said to my guys, like, that's where the level we have to be. And Simon was just instrumental in. I don't know what the word would be. It's just rewriting the book on how to run a best gun maker. The blog that Wesley's has, there's
the Explorer.
The Explorer. And Simon, I remember one year, it was 9 years ago, he went around, he used to take beautiful photographs, and he came by the Rigby booth, he went by one or two of the other London makers, took pictures and wrote a really nice piece about, you know, what each company was doing. And Simon found that picture, Simon Bart from Rigby's found that picture a couple of nights ago, and I'm 25 years old and like barely shaving, and it was literally myself on the corner of the Blaser booth, because we're part of the Blaser group. I had about, I mean, we're on a booth right now that's 80 by 20 feet. I think I had 3 feet by 2 feet. I mean, you could like just about.
It was tiny.
It was tiny, and I had 4 guns, and that was it. And now to see us at a place now where, you know, as I say, there's 80 by 20 feet. We've got a Land Rover behind the camera just there. We've got 35 guns on the booth. I've got 13 staff from Rigby's here, great buddies like yourself. I mean, it's just such a cool thing to come.
People
to
just
show.
come by.
People come by, yeah. And I think Rigby's I think the booth here is kind of it's like the hub of the show.
Right.
The tent has always been, you know, we've always found the tent works really well because you're in basically an aircraft hangar in these exhibition halls.
The tent's the dream, right?
It is the dream.
So if you read the books, right, if you read Capstick or I mean, if you read Hearn's The White Hunters by Brian Hearn, and he talks about the early years of safari, the pre-war years, the post-World War I, pre-World War II, 20s and 30s. This is like, and that's what everyone dreams of. And very few people will ever go to Africa on a big game hunt, and then even fewer can afford it's expensive. It's an expensive hobby. The 60, 70 day tent safari.
Yeah.
But when you see this booth and you see the Land Rover and you see the backdrop and you see the tent and the campaign furniture, it's just like, that's it.
Yeah.
You're like, that is it. That is the dream manifested in reality. Absolutely. Here at the Rigby booth.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, the Shikari box stock that you guys have very kindly stepped up and ordered from
We're
us.
super excited.
But it's like I call it a time capsule gun. Like, you know, you look at those old black and white photos from a century ago and you're like, oh man, like that's real life. I want to get back to that. And I think buying a Rigby, the Shikari in this case, it gives you like a step back into the past. You know, being able to own that rifle, carry that rifle, it gives you a certain flavor of how it was to hunt back then.
It was really interesting last night when Dig was talking about all the books.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take, you know, you have the day book from Rigby and you had the account book and you had the order, is it the order book?
The order book, yeah.
And so, you know, different people would make the inscriptions and some of them were just like 416 Magnum Mauser. And the rest of them are very detailed. Because like when I bought, obviously there are more people than just Rigby makes a 500 double, right? But when you buy something like that, you're kind of saying as a buyer, like, hey, this is my brand. This is the
kind of the association and the feel and the look, and this is what fits my personality. And it's really exciting knowing, like, hey, in 100 years, some other kid will be sitting at hopefully, if we're all still around, sitting around at a table talking about, like, oh, I looked up at this in the book, in the day book, and these guys ordered 4 of these matching guns because they were all business partners, and that'll be my little bit of the story in the book, in the Rigby story, and it's really, really cool to think about that.
Absolutely. And at the VIP event we were at, you joined us for last time.
I snuck in. They let me sneak in.
No, it was great having you there, and we had, I think we were like 40 people there, and I made a little speech about, just thanking people and trying to strike the right tone with that, and I talked about the people. There's not people and then Rigby. Like, the people are Rigby. The people who work at the company, our shareholders in Germany, you guys buying the guns, and that is the story. The people are the story. They are the brand. And I think, I think you hit the nail on the head there with, in 100 years' time, someone will be able to look back and say, who are these 4 guys who place these orders, and how they built a piece of the company, or a stepping stone into the future of the business. But I've tried to position Rigby's as just as a really welcoming, inviting place where people feel comfortable enough to come up and photobomb our podcast.
Or join the podcast.
Join the podcast, or come and buy a gun. Or whether in the mornings at the shows, I get my whole team down for breakfast. We met at 7:30 this morning, all 13 of us around the table, and we talk about several things, but everyone has a chance to talk about their, it's an idea that someone close to me shared with me, their rose and their thorn of the day. So I said, what's your rose and your thorn of yesterday? And everyone says, well, the highlight of the day for me was selling the car, and I think the thorn was, I think we could do this better. And one of the things we talked about was, I don't care if it's someone coming on the booth to buy 4 box locks, a rising bite, or a baseball cap. Like, that person's going to be...
Or a pair of cufflinks.
Or a pair of cufflinks. They're going to get the same service, the same welcome, the same Rigby hello, regardless of what they're buying. And I think that is like the bedrock of what the success has been built upon. And I can't say it enough, the team that we have here they're a very special bunch.
Everybody's great. I mean, and it keeps growing every year. Every year I come by, they're like, oh, we've got you even have an American now.
We even have an American. He's just here. In fact, so why don't you jump in on you can say a little hello as well. So, yeah, Slade is our...
the American, the
resident American,
American.
Based in London. All good, man?
Doing good, just cleaning some guns.
Very good. Yeah, I saw that. The camera can't see you pretending to be busy in the background, buddy.
He's a very busy
Working
guy.
hard.
Yeah.
Very busy guy. Great guy.
Someone's got to do it.
Right, right.
That's it.
It's good. No, the team definitely does keep expanding, and in fact, somebody came by this morning and described the booth as the Rigby Death Star of Dallas Safari Club.
That's amazing.
Just sort of like this sort of big thing here in the corner, which is cool.
If you go as a consumer, right, as like the customer that didn't have a family connection, my family were school teachers and rock farmers, and no one in my family owned a Rigby or any other brand. So as a fresh consumer, someone that didn't go with father or grandfather, and no one owned a Holland or a Purdy or a Boss or a Rigby, it's when you're walking around, right, as that guy, like, hey, I'm finally going to order a gun. This is, when you walk by, this is so much more welcoming and inviting. And you have a story, like this booth is a storybook. Like, it looks like we're in Africa, except we're in obviously suits and it's freezing in here, but it looks like we're in Africa, and because it would be the same. Simon would have his camera, but it tells, like, you hit the story, right? Like, if you're telling a story, this is it. And so it's really cool, and it is more inviting. The staff, when you walk in there, every staff member you have, which I attribute to your wonderful management classes.
No, that's fine. Thank you. No, thank you. I think. Again, one of the big parts of the success here is we've not tried to do anything clever. So people ask all the time, like, how have you guys brought the company back, and how did you decide to do it? And we didn't really decide much at the beginning. It kind of just happened. But one thing we definitely did decide was that open, welcoming sort of vibe that we have, but also that we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, everyone loves Rigby because of what the company has historically been. So we don't need to turn up on day one and come up with some new gun or a new idea or a new design. We just had to do exactly what John Rigby did. So we started off by repartnering with Mauser, who are one of our sister companies, producing the Big Game and the Highland Stalker, the Rising Bite, the Shikari. all of these guns, whilst they're made with better materials, the steel has got better these days. We've improved some of the processes. They are in their essence exactly the same as they would have been a century ago.
Right.
And the story of the company is the company.
The experience is probably very close, right?
I think
like
so.
the fitting, the coming by. Your
so.
experience of buying a gun is very similar to it would be.
I think
Except
so.
we pay via the internet now, and I don't bring
Pay via the internet.
I don't bring you a bank draft in shillings.
No.
But
no, unfortunately not. But it's really interesting actually how it is this modern interpretation of, of a historic idea, and to I suppose we're at a point now where the company's really well established, and it's sort of where is the step into the future. And I think people like John Rigby, they were visionaries. They weren't. I'm sure John Rigby a century ago wasn't making matchlocks and flintlocks and things. He was thinking outside the box with his Magnum Mauser rifles and those sorts of things. And for us in the UK, we're now facing we are facing a lead ban for lead shot for shotguns. Now, I think people like John Rigby and the other London gun makers back in the day would have seen that as an opportunity, which is how we see it. So we're talking about, what is the future shotgun going to be for Rigby's that can shoot and handle steel shots? So what is the future product, taking that heritage in the spirit of what John Rigby would have done and creating something new? So
when was the first Magnum? When was the first?
In the old days,
yeah,
or since we relaunched? I believe it was 1899.
And then you're making it, so it's been in production over 100 years.
So Rigby produced about 100 and if you put it with the 350s as well, probably close to 1,000 Magnum actions between the turn of the century and the Second World War. And after that, the Mauser factory was lost. And in the sort of the 50s and 60s, they were buying old military actions using them. They had the Brevis actions. Paul Roberts era in the 80s and 90s, he was using Bruno actions.
I forgot about the Bruno
actions. And it was only in 2013 when Blaser Group bought Rigby's, who also own Mauser. And in fact, it was at this show or Safari Club where I met the owner of that group, and that was my, I don't know if you could call it a job interview, and that's probably a separate podcast for another day. But walking around, we talked about how would we. He said to me, "So we're gonna buy Rigby's, and we've heard you might be the guy to do it. How would you do it?" I think he said I had 10 minutes to tell him how I would do it, and basically I told him what we've since done. And one of the things I said is we have to find a mint condition or very good condition pre-war 416 Rigby. That's where we have to start, and we have to get Mauser making Mauser actions again. Not that there's anything wrong with their modern rifles at all, but we need to get back to that Rolls-Royce Magnum Mauser action, which made Rigby and Mauser, frankly, so famous. And we actually walked over to a booth, and they had 2 of these 416 Rigbys, and Michael said to me, which one should we take? And I said, I think they were both really good examples. And very expensive, as people will know at home.
They're very expensive.
Very expensive, very collectible. I said, I think we should have this one. And he turned to the gentleman and he said, we'll take both. So we actually had one at Rigby's and one at Mauser. So when we were redeveloping it with Mauser.
That's your pattern rifle then?
That was our pattern rifle,
Do you think when they developed this, right? And so that was, 1899 you said?
1899, so yeah, so originally this was the 400 350 caliber, which is a rimmed caliber, which they developed it for. Yeah.
Like, do you think that they were sitting around and that was that in Dublin or in London? And they thought, hey, I think 20 years from now, you guys will be somebody at this company will be sitting in Dallas, Texas, selling these rifles.
The other thing I find amazing as well is that you have, Rigby was based in London at that time, working with Peter Paul Mauser in Germany, these two sort of business partners, developing, the commercial side of this action, but the military side of it from Mauser was huge. The German army, various other armies equipped with this. With
almost every army in the world.
Absolutely.
There was hundreds of variants.
Absolutely. Well, Rigby's, is a lesser-known part of the Rigby story, but the third John Rigby, his experience of making rifles, being a phenomenal rifle shot as part of the Irish shooting team, he was actually employed by the British government to help develop the 303. So he was instrumental in that journey. And what I find amazing, we need to ask Diggory actually to write a story about it sometime, but you got these two business partners, one of them who helped develop the 303, John Rigby, and Peter Paul Mauser, who developed the Mauser action, who were selling all these guns with each other in the turn of the 20th century. And just a few years later, these two products, the 303 and the Mauser, were at war with each other. I just find that incredible. Globally. Yeah,
it was
the
wild.
First World War.
Yeah, it is always incredible to me when you see
because I've been in the import business a long time, and so we'll be in countries and they actually were fielding Mausers, M98. There was the 1888 Mauser through the M98 there during the war, and you had in some countries those armies had both been outfitted by Mauser.
Yeah.
And and in some places both of them were British trained, and they were fighting each other with the same rifle. It's the world is a very interesting place back then.
It sure is.
But then we have these amazing guns today, right? Because of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Jacob, I think we're going to wrap up here, and before we get interrupted by somebody else, is sort of
that wants to jump in on the
people
podcast,
hovering, desperate to get in here. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for
joining
having
us.
me.
An absolute pleasure.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for being a dude.
Thank you.